the other conflict we're following pretty closely, further developments within the last few hours, that's that Russia has accused Ukraine of shooting down a Russian military transport plane. It says it was carrying 65 captured Ukrainian soldiers. It was taking them, they say, to a prisoner exchange. Well, the BBC has verified this video. It shows the aircraft in the sky there in the distance. You can then see just behind the street sign the explosion coming up from the ground. 74 people, we believe, were on board that plane altogether. That includes crew. No one is reported to have survived. Now, Russia, for its part, says radars detected the launch of 2 Ukrainian missiles. They've called it a barbaric act of terrorism. Well, the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, has blamed Ukraine for that crash.
In the Belgorod region, a Russian transport aircraft Il-76 was downed. It was supposed to transport from the Moscow region to Belgorod 65 military servicemen of the armed forces of Ukraine. They were accompanied by 3 Russian officers and the crew of 6 people. All of them died. The Ukrainian prisoners of war were transported to the Belgorod region in order to conduct yet another swap that was agreed between Moscow and Kiev.
Well, Ukrainian military intelligence, it's issued a statement saying it doesn't have any reliable information about who exactly was on board the plane and how many people were there. It also says that Ukraine had not been informed of the need to ensure the safety of airspace near the city of Belgorod at the defined time. They say that is something that's happened on numerous occasions before. In that statement, they go on to say it could point to Russia's deliberate actions. They say aimed at putting the lives and safety of those prisoners of war under threat. So they are certainly blaming Russians for not telling them that that plane was there. They say they've increased missile attacks in that area, given the increase in the number of Russian military planes in the area around the border. So what exactly do we know? With the latest update from Kyiv, here's our Eastern Europe correspondent, Sarah Rainsford.
Well, we've certainly got our first official statements from the Ukrainian side here in Kyiv. We've been asking for comments and for explanation for several hours, and we now have 2 statements coming in rapid succession. So one is from the military intelligence unit here, and also the second one from Ukraine's General Staff of the Armed Forces. Now, there are some answers and still some questions. Essentially, what we have from the Ukrainian military intelligence is an implicit acknowledgement, I think, that Ukraine has shot down a Russian transport plane, an Il-76 plane, over Belgorod, as Russia has been claiming all day. But Ukraine is not able to say, or is not saying who or what was on board that plane. The statement says that there is no reliable information about what was on board, whether there were prisoners of war on board who were being returned as part of a prisoner exchange to Ukraine, but they are saying that there was a prisoner exchange that was planned today. And they then go on to explain that normally, if there is a prisoner exchange, then the Russians will give information to Ukraine about how those prisoners will be returned. And usually, if aircraft are to be used, there will be an agreement that there will be essentially a cessation of fire in that area whilst those prisoners are moved around. Now, Ukraine is saying that didn't happen this time. So again, not saying there were definitely prisoners on board, but it does say that there was information missing ahead of that prisoner exchange. They are then saying this may indicate, the statement says, deliberate actions by Russia aimed at creating a threat to life and to the safety of Ukrainian prisoners. Just to get to the General Staff statement, again, it's not directly saying it's even talking about the shooting down of this plane, but it talks a lot about the threat of missile strikes from the Belgorod region on Kharkiv, the northeastern part of Ukraine. It's talking about a real increase in missile strikes, and it's saying that Ukraine must essentially remove that threat. And it's talking about targeting not just the missile launch sites, but also the delivery of weapons into into and around Russia. So again, implicitly, I think we can see that the picture is building here that Ukraine is acknowledging at least shooting down a plane, if not who or what was on board.
Yes, and Sarah, it's a familiar story, isn't it, that much as this is a military dispute, it's also an information war, isn't it? Claim and counterclaim. And I wonder whose narrative this plays into, because both sides keen to spin this as a story that they are the victim.
Well, I think we can say very clearly that Russia has a very long and proven history of disinformation and outright lies. So you have to be extremely careful when you're dealing with information, particularly now coming from Russia. I think that's one thing we ought to be absolutely clear about. In this case, though, I can say that the Russian side has been very, very quick to say outright that there were prisoners of war on board that plane, Ukrainian prisoners, and to say that Ukraine has shot them down. It's also gone so far as to suggest that that was done deliberately. Now, Ukraine, of course, as they say, is not confirming there were prisoners on board. If that is confirmed, it will be a horrific situation, of course, for all of the families of those involved. I've met some of the families here in Ukraine, people who haven't seen their loved ones for a very, very long time and have been terrified even before this about what might happen to them, and I think now are extremely worried, waiting to get some kind of news.
That's Sarah Rainsford there with the very latest for us from Kyiv. I just want to take you to New York, and this is the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, and he has now called for an emergency session of the UN Security Council. He says that he wants that to happen within the next few hours. That will be 8 o'clock UK time, so 3 o'clock US time, calling for that emergency session to sit. He says that is the only way that we will find out from Ukraine what exactly happened with the downing of this military transport plane that, as we said, carrying 65 Ukrainian soldiers, designed to be taking part in a prisoner exchange. Russia has called it a barbaric act of terrorism. So with the 65 prisoners of war and crew taking the total death toll to 75 in that crash of a plane close to the Ukrainian border.